I'm here on top of a hill in upstate New York, a hill where a monument to an angel stands, an angel that led Joseph Smith to find an ancient American record that testifies of Jesus Christ. But how exactly was he led to the record? How was it translated? And what's its significance for us today? Join me for the next few minutes as we explore the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. My name is Casey Griffiths, and I love learning about church history. Join me as we travel the world and explore the history of the Latter-day Saints. This is Restoration Revealed. The Book of Mormon claims to be an ancient record of a people in the Americas. It's a 1,000-year account, full of prophets teaching of Christ, warning of war and destruction, and ultimately, a visit of Jesus Christ to the Americas. This book has led millions to a deeper faith in Jesus. Naturally, many have wondered if it's true, or if it's something Joseph Smith made up. We start our journey to upstate New York to explore several historical and sacred sites. We're here today in Palmyra, which is still kind of a quaint little village on the outskirts of Rochester, New York, just like it was back when the Smith family lived here. But now we're heading to the Smith farm, which is where the Smiths made their home, where he first found out about the Book of Mormon. The historic Smith family farm consists of a visitor center, a reconstruction of the cabin where Joseph would have lived during the first vision and the discovery of the Book of Mormon, as well as another Smith home built shortly after those initial events. It also stands next to the sacred grove, the forest that young Joseph would have seen God the Father and Jesus Christ in. Just across the road also sits the Palmyra Temple, whose windows actually open to a view of the sacred grove. It was here where the Smith family moved to build a new life in upstate New York on the edge of the American frontier. Many church historical sites have a visitor center where guests can receive tours from missionaries or ask questions. Guests can also go outside and take a walk through the sacred sites and enjoy nature. However, we're here to explore the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. This is where the young Joseph Smith would receive another amazing experience and where we can really get into the history of the Book of Mormon. The Smiths spent several years clearing off all the trees from this area in order to make arable farmland. In fact, behind me is the sacred grove, where the father and son appeared to Joseph Smith. But the story of the Book of Mormon really starts in this structure right here, in this humble little log cabin where the Smith family lived. This is a recreation of the home where the Smiths would have been living when, in 1820, Joseph Smith has the first vision, and where they were still at in 1823 when another very special event happens just up these stairs. Joseph and his siblings likely shared a room upstairs, where Joseph has his remarkable experience. It was most likely in this room, the night of September 21st, the 22nd, 1823, Joseph said that he had kneeled down to pray to know his standing before God because he hadn't had a manifestation since the first vision. As he was praying, the room began to be filled with light, and an angel appeared who introduced himself as Moroni. The angel Moroni was the last prophet in the Book of Mormon. He protected the ancient record of his people, the golden plates, and buried them in a hill in upstate New York. Sometime after his death, he reappeared to Joseph as a resurrected and glorified being, describing to Joseph the important events about to occur. The angel then said that God had a work for Joseph to do, and that Joseph's name should be had for good and evil among all nations. But most importantly, he told Joseph that there was a record concealed in a hill not far from Joseph Smith's house, and that the Lord intended for Joseph to bring it forth. The angel appeared and then reappeared 3 times throughout the night, giving the same instruction, but sometimes adding on to it. By the time the last appearance ended, Joseph Smith said he heard the rooster crow and realized that his interview with the angel had taken up the entire night.
After spending almost the entire night listening to the angel's instructions, Joseph Smith woke up and went out in the fields to work, but he was exhausted.
Joseph's dad, noticing how tired he was, asked him to go back home and rest.
While he was on his way there, he said he was crossing a fence, maybe like this one, where he collapsed, fell to the ground, and saw the angel again. The angel repeated everything he'd already told Joseph, and then told him to tell his father, which he did. His father told him it was of God and to follow the angel's instructions, and so Joseph set off down a road like this one on his way to the hill that the angel had described.
Joseph Smith would have hiked about 3 miles south to a large hill. Eventually, we arrive at a large visitor center built by the church. Most strikingly, behind the museum, on top of the hill, stands a large monument of Moroni, marking the discovery of this sacred buried record.
Joseph Smith first came here on September 22nd, 1823, where he was led to find a record.
Here, Joseph saw a large stone, which he moved with a branch. Under the stone, he beheld the golden plates, along with some other artifacts. At first, Joseph tried to grab the plates, but the angel stopped him and told him he was not yet ready to take them. He would need to wait and come back regularly to this location for several years.
Joseph Smith came to this hill every year on the same date, September 22nd, for 4 years until he received the record today known as the Book of Mormon.
During these 4 years, Joseph Smith was not only instructed by the angel Moroni, but also had time to grow and mature, eventually marrying Emma Hale, who would accompany him to the hill to receive the plates. Emma once recorded,
"I once felt of the plates, as they thus lay on the table, tracing their outline and shape. They seemed to be pliable like thick paper, and would rustle with a metallic sound when the edges were moved by the thumb, as one does sometimes thumb the edges of a book."
Attempts were made to translate the plates. There were also attempts made by others to steal the plates, sometimes by means that threatened their lives. Eventually, due to this persecution, Joseph and Emma would move about 130 miles southeast to Emma's family farm. We drive up into the Appalachian Mountains, along the Susquehanna River, to where Emma's father's farm would have been. Today, the Isaac Hale farm consists of a reconstruction of Isaac Hale's home, along with other buildings and locations we'll get into later. These locations along the Susquehanna River are where Joseph and Emma would have some temporary peace while attempting to translate the plates.
It's here that Joseph and Emma come to escape the persecutions in Palmyra. Joseph and Emma move to their cabin right here, where the majority of the translation takes place, where Joseph and Emma make their first home.
The exact details of how the translation happened are not known for certain, but we do know that Joseph used sacred objects, sometimes called Urim and Thummim, due to its similarities with biblical objects, also called Urim and Thummim. For years, Joseph had exercised faith in objects such as seer stones to aid him in his work. Now he was to use his gift for the purpose of translating an ancient sacred record. Joseph would insert these objects into a hat for the purpose of blocking out light, and he would see the translation of the plates.
Here in the winter of 1828, with Emma and Martin Harris acting as scribe, Joseph Smith produces a large manuscript from the translation. They are continuing at a good pace until June of 1828, when disaster strikes. Martin Harris asks if he can take the manuscript back to Palmyra to show it to his wife to convince her of the truthfulness of the work, and almost immediately after he leaves, the manuscript is lost.
Known today as the Lost Manuscript, this event was devastating to Joseph Smith. The angel took the plates for a season until Joseph Smith sufficiently repented. This was a hard time, and it was coupled with an even more tragic event.
In the meantime, back here in Harmony, Emma Smith gives birth to their first child, who dies almost immediately after being born.
Just a few hundred feet away from the Smith home is a cemetery where members of Joseph's family are buried. Here stands the gravestone of Joseph and Emma's child. Coupled with the loss of the manuscript, this was an especially hard time for Joseph and Emma. Joseph eventually received the plates back from the angel. This time, Joseph would wait just over a year before really diving into translating the golden plates.
The second phase of translation picks up in the spring of 1829, when a young school teacher named Oliver Cowdery arrives at Joseph and Emma's home here in Harmony in the company of Joseph's brother, Samuel.
Joseph had not even met Oliver before this event. Oliver had moved to the area and heard rumors of Joseph Smith. He'd meet with Joseph's family and ask them questions. Eventually, Oliver would pray and discover that God wanted him to help Joseph. He sought out Joseph, and the two strangers would begin translating together, beginning almost from scratch after the loss of the first manuscript.
Joseph and Oliver immediately strike up a friendship and dive into the work of the translation the very next day after he arrives, beginning an amazing and miraculous process that produces almost the entire manuscript of the Book of Mormon in a short period of time.
Oliver would record,
"These were days never to be forgotten. To sit under the sound of a voice dictated by the inspiration of heaven awakened the utmost gratitude of this bosom. Day after day I continued, uninterrupted, to write from his mouth as he translated the history or record called the Book of Mormon."
About 70% of the translation of the Book of Mormon takes place here in this little home in Harmony, Pennsylvania. Joseph and Oliver Cowdery would sit at a table like this one. Joseph would sit on this side using the Nephite interpreters or the seer stone, and he would dictate the text of the Book of Mormon to the scribe, usually Oliver Cowdery, who was sitting right here. Joseph would dictate sentence after sentence, wait until Oliver had written it down. The scribe would write down the sentence, read it back to him to make sure it was correct, and then they'd move on to the next sentence.
Researchers studied the remaining documents and discovered that Oliver would systematically write down each sentence as if being dictated, then pause for confirmation of the words, demonstrating that the translation of the Book of Mormon happened just as Joseph said.
The entire process may have involved them working around 9 hours a day, and they produced the entire 531-page book, entire text of the Book of Mormon as we know it is produced, in just under 3 months of time.
While many famous authors have written masterpieces, it took many of them years to write. Some of them already had experience writing. Researchers have used word studies, such as stylometry, to examine the words in the Book of Mormon and found them to be more complex than many contemporary authors of that time. Further stylometric studies have shown that the words don't match Joseph Smith's own writings or those of his associates, suggesting it was not created by them. The Book of Mormon is complex with timelines, geographies, flashbacks, genealogies, and ancient Hebraic poetry styles such as chiasms, some that range for an entire chapter. It includes deep intertextual relationships with the Bible and references to ancient America such as roads, cement buildings, complex governments, and warfare previously unknown. It's impossible to imagine a 24-year-old with no experience in writing producing such a book in only 3 months. It's basically a first draft.
This is not only a fruitful time for translation, it's a fruitful time for revelation. Several sections of the Doctrine and Covenants are received here in Harmony, Pennsylvania.
These revelations include sections within the Doctrine and Covenants. The revelations not only add to the complexity of Joseph Smith's busy schedule, but also add a witness to his revelatory power.
And maybe most importantly, one of the most important incidents that happens during translation happens when Joseph and Oliver are both reading and learn about the Savior giving authority to baptize. Joseph and Oliver both start asking questions about where this authority comes from and how a person receives it. They want to know how they can obtain this authority, so they retire to a grove of trees near where they're translating and pray to ask the Lord how to obtain the authority.
Just north of the Isaac Hale farm is the Priesthood restoration site. Here lies the proposed location where Joseph and Oliver went into and received an amazing experience.
An angel appears to them who identifies himself as John the Baptist from the New Testament, and he gives them the authority of the Aaronic priesthood. He directs them to go down to the nearby Susquehanna River where they baptize each other and then afterwards ordain each other to the priesthood.
Another monument that stands next to Joseph Smith's home, representing John the Baptist as an angel appearing to Joseph and Oliver and giving them the same authority as Jesus had in the Bible. Other angels, such as Peter, James, and John, would appear and give them more priesthood power to organize the church. It's significant that Joseph received this authority while translating. If the Book of Mormon is true, then not only was Joseph Smith a prophet, but the authority he was given suggests the church Joseph Smith organized was true as well.
Now, they're only in harmony for 2 months during the translation when persecution increases because of rumors about the so-called Gold Bible. So at the end of May, early June, they travel up to Fayette, New York, where they stay with a friendly family, the Whitmers, and that's where the last month of translation takes place.
The Whitmers were friends of Oliver Cowdery. While translating with Joseph, Oliver would write to David Whitmer about the translation. David tried to convince his family to agree to host Oliver and Joseph. At first they were hesitant, partly due to the fields that needed to be plowed. But upon waking up one morning and seeing the fields miraculously plowed, they took it as a sign and hastened to prepare for the Smiths' arrival. It was here where Joseph and Oliver hoped for peace while they finished up the translation of the Book of Mormon. The Whitmer Historic Farm site consists of a chapel with a museum for visitors to learn more about this special location. And just next to this sits a recreation of the Whitmer home.
Increasing persecution forced Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery to relocate here to Fayette, New York, where they stayed with the Whitmer family. Here at the Peter Whitmer Sr. Farm is where the last month of translation took place.
A unique story about this location concerns Mary Whitmer, the matriarch of the Whitmer family. She had been working more than usual due to Oliver and Joseph living in the home. One day she went outside, apparently frustrated by the amount of work, when a man approached her. He was apparently an angelic messenger, and he showed her the golden plates, making her potentially the first witness of the plates besides Joseph Smith.
And another very significant event occurs here as well. Somewhere in the woods near the Peter Whitmer Sr. Farm is where the 3 witnesses, David Whitmer, Martin Harris, and Oliver Cowdery, were taken to a place where the angel appeared to them and showed them the plates and the artifacts associated with translation. They heard the voice of God testify that the record was true, and their witness is in the front of every copy of the Book of Mormon to this day.
And just as soon after, Joseph would show 8 more witnesses the plates and let them hold and handle them. The witnesses all described the plates to be about 60 pounds, 6 inches by 8 inches, with silver D-shaped rings. Some have wondered how the golden plates could have possibly weighed only 60 pounds. One convincing theory is that the plates were made of a Mesoamerican gold alloy called tumbaga, which is a mixture of gold, silver, and copper, and very prevalent in ancient times. The 3 witnesses left behind powerful statements that confirmed their experience of seeing tangible plates. Martin Harris, after being accused of seeing an imaginary vision, replied,
"Gentlemen, do you see that hand? Are you sure you see it? Are your eyes playing a trick or something? No? Well, as sure as you see my hand, so sure did I see the angel in the plates."
David Whitmer would say,
"No, sir, I was not under any hallucination, nor was I deceived. I saw with these eyes, and I heard with these ears. I know whereof I speak."
And Oliver said simply,
At the time we saw the record, of which it has been spoken, brought and laid before us, by an angel, arrayed in glorious light, ascend out of the midst of heaven. Now if this is human juggling, judge ye.
Joseph felt a burden being lifted from him. Finally, others had seen the plates. He wasn't alone. With the translation complete, it was now time for them to work on printing the Book of Mormon. He found a printer in Palmyra by the name of E.B. Grandin. Grandin would overcharge Joseph. Martin Harris would eventually sell much of his land to fund the printing, adding another witness to his testimony of the Book of Mormon. I head back to the city of Palmyra, where the Grandin Printing Museum is located. Enclosed in this modern building is the original E.B. Grandin building. Visitors can see for themselves how the Book of Mormon was printed and learn more about its early history.
It's here in the offices of E.B. Grandin where the Book of Mormon was set to type and then printed 16 pages at a time on proofs like this that were then folded and glued and sewn together to bind the Book of Mormon. In fact, on a printing press, much like this, with the actual ink stain still on the floor, where the Book of Mormon was produced.
To finish up this story of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, I fly back to Utah to meet Reed Moon, a collector of rare Latter-day Saint artifacts, to show me a very rare and valuable artifact relating to the printing of the Book of Mormon.
Reed, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Reed has a shop where he displays collected artifacts and props related to anything from Star Wars, Harry Potter, Marvel, to church history and the Book of Mormon. There's even a statue here of Joseph Smith's younger brother, Samuel Smith, the first missionary to carry forth the Book of Mormon. Today, Reed has invited me to see part of his church history collection, and he takes me back to where he has stored two very special artifacts related to our topic today.
This is one you can see from the title page.
1830 Grandin Press, right there.
Printed by E.B. Grandin for the author, Palmyra, 1830. It's always nice when there's an ownership inscription, and this person, when they got their book, proudly put their name at the top, Hyrum Smith's book. And he's actually one of the 8 witnesses and brother of the prophet. It's hard to beat this copy.
Yeah.
And I have another one.
Okay, let's take a look.
Now this one shows more wear, but I would almost be disappointed if it didn't, because this is the copy that Samuel Smith took on all of his missions. First missionary, he has his ownership bookplate in the front. Now, both Hyrum and Samuel were witnesses. Samuel's name is right below Hyrum's at the bottom, and he told this story so many times, and to make it easy, he has starred and underlined his name, saying, "That's me. I am that Samuel H. Smith." So these two copies, just incredible. Hyrum Smith's copy, Samuel Smith's copy.
Wow. Well, this is history right in your hands. A copy of the Book of Mormon that was held and used by the first missionary and taught from by the first missionary, and someone that was deeply involved in the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. This is the end result. What a treasure. Well, Reed, thank you so much. These are just absolutely wonderful, and I'm so grateful for your willingness to share them with us and with our audience.
You're very welcome, and come back anytime.
I thank Reed for his special visit to see these historic items. There's so much more one could say about the Book of Mormon. We haven't even gotten into its historical content and what exactly it is in the book that brings so many readers to a deeper relationship with Christ. Its coming forth was full of large and small miracles meant to pique our curiosity and cause us to pick up a copy, hardback or digital, and read it for ourselves, asking, is it of man or is it of God? Thanks for watching this episode of Restoration Revealed. If you'd like to help us create more, please use the donate link in the description below.